The Madonna Stalker's Sinister Collection. Most storage units hold furniture, old clothes, or maybe a collection of vinyl records. But Robert Dewey Hoskins, the man who stalked and threatened Madonna, had other ideas. In 2012, after escaping from a mental hospital, Hoskins left behind a storage unit in Long Beach, California. When investigators opened it, they found a scene straight out of a nightmare: a headless baby doll surrounded by dozens of knives. If that wasn't disturbing enough, there was also a creepy clown mask, a sumo wrestler baby doll, and a Barbie backpack. Each item seemed carefully chosen, as if they were trophies or pieces of some twisted puzzle. Now, I get holding on to weird things. I still have a stuffed animal from middle school. But this is a whole new level of unsettling. Authorities were left questioning what these items symbolized in the mind of a man who once said he would slice Madonna's throat from ear to ear. Just the thought of it is enough to send shivers down your spine. A son's dark secret. Sometimes the scariest things are found close to home. For the Copeland family, it was a locked safe in their 10-year-old son's bedroom. At first, they thought it might contain something harmless, perhaps a collection of coins or a few secret toys. But what they found was anything but innocent. When the father pried open the safe, blood poured out, and inside was the severed head of the family's recently deceased dog. In a calm, almost chilling tone, the boy explained that he loved the dog so much, he didn't want to let her go. So after her burial, he dug her up, decapitated her with a kitchen knife, and stored the head in the safe as a keepsake. Love takes many forms. But this one is the stuff of nightmares. At least he didn't try to stuff the whole dog in there. Small mercies, I guess. The medical examiner's gruesome hobby. Dr. Michael Birkeland was supposed to bring closure to grieving families through his work as a medical examiner. Instead, he turned his storage unit into a grotesque archive of human remains. In 2012, a Pensacola storage auction revealed a horrifying secret. The unit contained body parts from over 100 people. Brains, hearts, lungs, all stored in Tupperware containers, trash bags, and even styrofoam cups. One heart was found in a styrofoam cup with a cracked lid, leaking formaldehyde. The air reeked of chemicals and decay. These weren't medical specimens. They were trophies harvested during private autopsies performed in funeral homes across Florida. Tupperware, great for leftovers, bad for body parts. Not exactly the ad campaign they'd hoped for. Birkeland's medical license had been revoked years earlier for failing to complete autopsy reports. But no one could have imagined this. An entire storage unit turned into a macabre mausoleum. Grandma's skeleton in the closet. In Clearwater, Florida, 2012, a storage unit auction almost became a scene out of a horror movie. Among the dusty belongings and old furniture was a blue-painted coffin. Inside, the skeletal remains of a grandmother who had been dead for 17 years. The family had fallen behind on payments, and the truth finally came out. Unable to afford a burial, they'd stored Grandma's body in the unit since her death in 1995. The coffin was in a non-air-conditioned space, baking in the Florida heat for nearly 2 decades. Yet somehow the remains were odorless, preserved by the funeral home's embalming process. Who needs a cemetery when you have a storage unit? Wait, don't answer that. Skeletons in the locker room. Public pools are supposed to be places of relaxation and fun. But for one elderly man in Colorado, they became the stuff of nightmares. He opened a locker in the changing room, one he'd accidentally mistaken for his usual spot, and out fell a human skeleton. The bones, fully decomposed, looked as if they had been crammed into the locker years ago. Was it an accident? A murder? The mystery remains unsolved. But one thing's for sure, no one ever used that locker again. The pool rules now include no running, no diving, and no opening cursed lockers. The safe of evil. A locksmith in Nevada was hired to open an abandoned safe for a landlord. What he uncovered was pure horror. Inside was a live grenade, several SD cards filled with unspeakable images, and a journal so depraved that the locksmith refused to describe its contents in detail. The items were traced back to a suspected child pornography ring. The locksmith later admitted that if he'd used a blowtorch instead of picking the lock, the grenade might have detonated. Sometimes what's locked away should stay locked forever. So, who's ready to buy a safe now, anyone? No? Thought so. A school locker full of nightmares. In 1987, police searched the locker of 15-year-old Timothy Lee Masters after the murder of a local girl, Peggy Hetrick. What they found shocked the entire community. Over 2,200 pages of violent writings and drawings depicting mutilated bodies, some eerily resembling the crime scene. Masters was convicted and sentenced to life in prison, only to be exonerated years later when DNA evidence cleared his name. To this day, Hetrick's killer remains unknown. But the contents of that locker, they're a haunting reminder of how dark the human mind can be. Creative writing class? Sure. But this was next level disturbing. The BBQ smoker with a surprise. Shannon Wisnett thought he was getting a great deal when he bought a BBQ smoker at a storage auction. What he didn't expect to find inside was a human leg. The severed limb belonged to John Wood, who had lost it in a plane crash and decided to keep it for burial with his body someday. Somehow he forgot it in storage, leaving Wisnett with a literal bone to pick. Instead of returning the leg quietly, Wisnett turned it into a sideshow attraction, charging people to see it. Teeth in the walls. A homeowner in Ohio discovered a hidden safe while refurbishing an old property. Inside were human teeth. No explanation, just teeth. There were no identifying marks, no context, just the silent, chilling question. Why? And who put them there? Dental savings plan? Or serial killer starter kit? You decide. The Reddit crawlspace. Horror, a Reddit user known as A Lumberjack discovered a hidden crawlspace in their new home. Behind the crawlspace door was a black safe. When the safe was opened, it revealed VHS tapes with cryptic labels like "Do Not Watch" and a handwritten note in black ink that simply read, "Save yourself." The user handed everything over to the police, and the contents of the tapes remain unknown. But the note lingers like a warning, a reminder that some doors are better left closed. Because sometimes curiosity doesn't just kill the cat, it changes your life forever. Which one of these stories creeped you out the most? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and most importantly, double-check your own storage. You never know what might be waiting. The strange woman on the back roads. I want to start by saying that I live a fairly straight-edge lifestyle, so I'm certain that what I saw and experienced last New Year's Eve wasn't some kind of hallucination or drunken stupor. It was real, human, 100%. I live on the edge of a typical small southern town, and while some of my friends live even further out, in the boondocks, I usually don't mind the drive. It's quiet, isolated, and accessible only by winding country roads. One of my close friends, Darren, lives with his family in one of the wealthier neighborhoods out here, also reachable only by these dark, remote roads. Every year, Darren's family throws a New Year's Eve party, and I'm always thrilled to get the invitation. It's always a fun time, full of people and good vibes. The only problem is the drive to get there, especially when the weather turns cold, which it had done just a few days before. That night, I made the bumpy, uncomfortable drive along those unkempt country roads, keeping my brights on because it was pitch dark. Even then, I had a hard time seeing the twists and turns ahead. Along this road, there's only one lonely, abandoned shack before Darren's neighborhood, and I sometimes notice lights on inside, even though I know no one lives there. A creepy figure in the darkness. As I drove along a straight section of the road, my headlights caught something in the trees. A figure standing on the side of the road. It was a woman, motionless, facing away from me. She was wearing a long white gown, which seemed completely out of place for the freezing cold. I didn't slow down or turn off my brights. I kept going, thankful she didn't step into the road. But as I glanced in my rearview mirror, my stomach dropped. She had turned around to follow me, standing completely still, frozen in place. That was enough to send chills down my spine, and I told myself that no way was she a fellow party guest. I didn't stop. Arriving at the party, but unease still lingers. I finally made it to Darren's house around 8 p.m., parking among a few other cars in the gravel circle outside. The party was just getting started, and we had a great time, celebrating both the ball drop in New York and the midnight celebration for our time zone. As always, I stayed behind to help clean up. By the time I was ready to leave, my car was the only one left. When I got in and started the engine, the low tire pressure light came on. My car is old, and this kind of thing always happens when the temperature drops, so I didn't panic. But I couldn't shake the thought of the woman I had seen earlier. What if she was still out there? I debated taking the longer way home to avoid that road, but I didn't want to deal with extra driving so late at night. I figured it'd be fine, but I was wrong. The woman returns, and she's not alone. My blood ran cold. The voice was soft, almost calm, yet it filled me with dread. My body froze. I couldn't even scream. Then I heard the voice again. "Can you see me?" That was it. I had to move. I turned my phone light back on, and in the beam of light, I saw her. The woman in the white gown. Her features were twisted, grotesque, pale, gaunt, and with a face that seemed to be half missing. But she was smiling, or trying to smile. I couldn't look away, but I couldn't move either. All I could do was run. I bolted down the road, hearing her footsteps behind me, but I didn't stop. I knew I had to get back to Darren's house, fast. As I ran, I passed that creepy shack, the one I had seen before. I had a horrible thought. What if she lived there? But there was no time to think about it. I just ran. Back to safety. Or so I thought. I made it back to Darren's house, pounding on the door in sheer panic. His mother answered and immediately ushered me inside. I was shaking and I explained everything that had happened to her, Darren and his father. They were all understanding, offering me a place to stay for the night. I was too rattled to even think about contacting my own family first. The police came and promised to search the area around the road. They didn't find anything that night, but they took my statement. I was just glad to put that night behind me and crash into a bed in the guest room.